Arcadian Vanguard presents the Wrestling News in your daily wrestling newscast for Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. Good morning. I'm Mike Sempervive. We begin with WWE corporate news. WWE CEO Nick Khan was interviewed in Sports Business Journal yesterday and weighed in on the company's plans for a future sale, as well as the company's recent successes. Khan expressed his belief that recent upturns in TV viewership and live event gates would be beneficial in the potential negotiation of new media rights for Raw and SmackDown. The article noted WWE's year-over-year audience gains of 5% for NXT, 9% for Raw, and 8% for SmackDown, as well as average viewership for premium live events increasing by 50% in 2023 so far. Also noted were Raw and SmackDown recently setting all-time live gate records in several markets, as well as PLEs like Elimination Chamber and Royal Rumble experiencing their highest grossing additions ever. Said Khan, quote, "To me, the success we've seen in the ratings is a combination of factors, certainly Triple H, but that would also include the entire writing team, the producers, the superstars and in-ring performers, and the system that Vince set up. Any organization that thinks it's great, the system moves no matter who comes and who goes," end quote. Khan indicated that the new media rights deals would begin to be negotiated by the middle of the year and stressed that any potential buyer would have to honor any deals made prior to a sale. CNBC financial analyst David Faber also weighed in yesterday on Squawk on the Street, addressing what appears to be an increased likelihood of an imminent sale of WWE in the near future.
This is potentially being sold. A lot of people had doubts about it for any number of reasons, including, of course, whether or not Vince McMahon, who still owns, 37% of the company, and, in many ways controls it, would ever really sell. We'll get to that in a minute. But from what I'm hearing, at least from people familiar with the situation, is shaping up to pretty good sale process. Some people saying pretty hot and heavy. And those who even were somewhat doubtful, in fact, that you get to a sale at the end seem less so. Does that mean that something gets done here? Listen, unclear.
While discussing potential buyers, Faber mentioned UFC Owners Endeavor Group as well as the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, Colorado investment firm Liberty Media, and what he described as a private equity interest that could be in partnership with a well-known name in the business. Faber had previously indicated on the show that NBC's parent company Comcast, which owns Peacock and USA Network, is not in the running. In All Elite Wrestling news, during an appearance on his wife Renee Paquette's The Sessions podcast, Jon Moxley responded to recent comments by CM Punk in which Punk criticized Moxley's ideas for a main event program between the two last summer and accused Moxley of refusing to lose to him. Be advised that the following clip contains strong language.
The night in
Cleveland?
fucking what's his dick's talking about, it was in Minneapolis. It was the night he came back and was hopping around on one foot, bumping around Inner Circle or whatever after me and Jericho wrestled in a badass match, by the way. So we're talking later about stuff. Now keep in mind, at this time, this is my whole point. I basically don't work there for all intents and purposes. I don't even work here. Tony is not my boss. I don't even have to be in this room. I don't have to do shit. So even me being in this room and offering and agreeing to a storyline that puts you over at the pay-per-view, if anything, I'm bending over backwards for Tony and for this dude.
Earlier in the podcast, Moxley stressed that he was not under contract to AEW at the time, despite being AEW interim world champion.
I will say this. I'm just going to give you like a tidbit of information from my point of view. The entire summer, I was not under contract. No contract. Free agent. I was at SummerSlam weekend wrestling fucking Desperado and shit. The day of SummerSlam, fucking suplexed him on a bunch of aluminum cans and shit, cut in half. It was fucking dope. I could have walked in at SummerSlam that night with the AEW fucking belt if I had been so inclined. Nobody knew that because I don't put my shit out there in the world and let everybody know every fucking thing about my business,
Moxley was also critical of the behind-the-scenes environment of AEW in general.
And I don't want any negative bullshit.
Right.
Like, what's the fucking complaint about? You know, like, ugh.
And I guess you can kind of like unload on that a little bit of just the frustrations of not even this situation, but
I will say this, and I hate to say, I don't think I've ever said anything even remotely negative about AEW, but I will say this as an observer. It seems like, I spent 8 years on the Indies, spent a couple years in WWE developmental, spent like 8 years in WWE. I have never seen so much bullshit drama in one place in my entire fucking life. I hate to say that, but it's like, and I don't know if it's because of the age of social media, shit gets like blown out of proportion.
Right.
Like one person types one stupid fucking drunk tweet and all of a sudden it's all anybody wants to talk about.
In ratings news, last Monday's WrestleMania go-home episode of Raw drew the largest total audience and key demographic rating for the show in 5 weeks, according to Showbuzz Daily, with 1.843 million tuning in, including a 0.56 rating in the 18 to 49-year-old demographic. The audience was up 4% from last week's 1.771 million, and the key demo was up from last week's 0.55. The demo figure represented 731,000 viewers. In the hourly breakdown, Hour 1 drew 1.908 million, which grew to 1.921 million in Hour 2, and then dropped to 1.701 million in the third hour, for a cumulative loss of 207,000 viewers over the course of the show. Raw came in first place for the evening on cable TV in the key demo, up from second place last week. AEW Rampage, which aired last weekend on Saturday night instead of its usual Friday night spot, drew its second lowest total audience and key demographic rating of the year so far, according to Showbuzz Daily. The total audience for the tape show on TNT was 373,000, with a 0.10 rating in the key demographic, equivalent to 130,000 viewers, according to WrestleNomics. The Stand and Deliver go-home episode of NXT aired last night on the USA Network, featuring matches taped March 21st at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. In the main event, Tony D'Angelo and Channing Stacks Lorenzo beat Brooks Jensen and Josh Briggs. The show opener saw Axiom emerge victorious in a 20-man battle royal to earn the fifth and final spot in the North American title match this weekend at Stand and Deliver.
This Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles, Dragunov, McDonough, Dragon Lee, Axiom, and Wes Lee, who will be the North American champion. Which of these five will have their golden moment in Los Angeles?
Eddie Thorpe, formerly known as Carl Fredericks in the New Japan Pro Wrestling system and on the independent circuit, made his NXT television debut on the show, defeating Miles Bourne. Indy Hartwell earned a spot in the upcoming Stand and Deliver ladder match to crown a new NXT Women's Champion, defeating Ivy Nile and Sol Ruka in a triple threat match.
Ivy Nile make her way to Los Angeles to join Brutus, to join Julius. She's locking in her submission.
Referee's got to get in there. Referee's got to get in there.
Sinking it in. Is Hartwell going to tap? Hartwell could be closing in.
So close, Vic.
Also close to the ropes. And wait a minute.
Whoa!
Soul Snatcher. Hartwell with the big boot. Oh, wait a minute. Bam!
Wow.
Right to the back. Hartwell shoots a half. Hartwell shoots a half.
Indy's about to cash
into
in.
the cover.
Indy's going to cash in.
Indy's going to Los Angeles.
Wow.
Hartwell joins Zoe Stark, Gigi Dolan, Tiffany Stratton, and Lyra Valkyria in that match. During a promo segment, NXT director Shawn Michaels also granted former NXT Women's Champion Roxanne Perez a tentative spot in the match, pending medical clearance. In other results, Drew Gulak defeated Hank Walker, Elektra Lopez beat Valentina Feroz, and Tyler Bate went over Von Wagner. With some injury news, here's the Wrestling News' Lou Kipilman.
AEW Executive Vice President and one half of the Young Bucks, Matt Jackson, sustained a partially torn biceps during the March 15th Dynamite main event, pitting the Elite against the House of Black and the Jericho Appreciation Society, according to a report yesterday on Wrestling Observer Radio. The injury reportedly occurred early in the match, with Jackson working through it for the remainder of the match. So far, Jackson has declined surgery in the hopes it will shorten his recovery time, but there is no word on when he might be back in the ring. For the wrestling news, I'm Lou Kipilman.
In WrestleMania news, Finn Balor will be using his demon persona for his Hell in a Cell match with Edge this weekend in SoFi Stadium, as was officially confirmed by WWE on Twitter yesterday. Balor had teased the idea during a promo that aired the previous night on Monday Night Raw. Balor has only appeared as the Demon in 7 televised main roster matches to date, and has not used the persona since his loss to WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns at Extreme Rules 2021. And before we leave you today, we'd like to remind you that however you consume your content, you can find the wrestling news 24 hours a day and 7 days a week across social media. On Twitter, follow us at Wrestling News AV. Our Facebook page is also Wrestling News AV. The Wrestling News can also be found on the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube page. And for those who utilize Amazon Echo devices, just tell Alexa to play the Wrestling News podcast. And remember to make sure you add podcast at the end. Once again, for daily updates, breaking news, and more, follow the Wrestling News across social media. And that's the news for today. If anything happens, we will be here to tell you about it. No clickbait, no paywall, just the wrestling news. The Wrestling News is a division of Arcadian Vanguard, and the Wrestling Newscast is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network.